Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, True Crime with JessRose. How are you all? I'm sorry I've been missing again. Let me just explain. Obviously I have videos that I watch, etc. And if I really like the channel and they don't upload for a little while, I find it quite frustrating because I'm like, so then by the time they do upload again, I've kind of lost it with the channel sometimes, and it takes a while to get back into it again because you've got used to not watching it. And I feel that I need to explain, obviously, why there's been such a gap since my last story, because otherwise I'm doing the same thing. I got told off for this before for mentioning anything about my personal life and was told it was unprofessional, and I agree. I don't think when you start a story, no matter what it's about, to kind of go off topic too much. I do agree. I do think it's unprofessional. I have been following a podcast who has not transferred, but I think they've brought in a couple of other narrators, and they giggle and laugh throughout the whole story, and I just find it, I think that's unprofessional. That's my personal point of view. So I do understand where the guy was coming from, but I also feel I need to explain why I haven't been as consistent. And as I'd mentioned a few videos ago, I do struggle with my back. It's been something I've had for a long time now. And I've just really struggled the past couple of weeks. Even sitting down now to do this story, you might notice me jiggling around a little bit, which I'm going to try not to do too much. But it was, I just wanted to explain that's what's been happening. Now, while that's been going on, I have been looking at some stories that I would like to do for you. And this one, I actually watched the true story of quite a long time ago. I mean, it came out in 2009, and the story I did a few videos ago, which was the Nutty Putty Cave tragedy. I think it was John Edwards. Oh, please. I should have checked that before I come on. But that had a film / documentary type thing made about it, and I found it was romanticised a lot. This was not at all. It's brutal. If you do want to watch it, I'll give you the name and everything of it in a second. And that's where I was first aware of this crime, and it's the devastating Rachel Barber story, and it genuinely is. It's so sad. And the film based on it, and I think, given the research that I've done, I think the film did a very good job in highlighting everything regarding the case. And it's called, there's two names. I watched it, it was called I Am You. That's what it was called, but I don't know if they changed the name or they've got two names, or it's in different countries, it's different names. But you can also find it under the name of In Her Skin. So you've got I Am You or In Her Skin. And it goes, the film itself's from 2009. I think it's got Guy Pearce in it, playing Rachel's dad. So if you do want to have a look, that's obviously out there. Now, Rachel Barber was born back in 1984. And let me just tell you about this girl. Absolutely beautiful. You know, just someone everything I've looked at, everything I've researched, it really emphasises just how beautiful this girl was. And, she was. You look at the picture, she was just stunning. But take all that away, she was a very kind girl. She was very popular. She was very sweet. She had two younger sisters who looked up to her, and she was a fantastic role model for. her mum and dad, her mum Elizabeth Barber and her dad Mike Barber, obviously doted on her. And from a young age, Rachel showed a great interest in dance, and she started off with ballet from I think a very young age, 3 or 4. And she just showed not only a love for it, but a real God-given talent for it. To the point where they ripped up a carpet in a bedroom and just had the floorboards varnished and kind of had like a little dance studio in a bedroom done for her. They really wanted to give her every opportunity to live this dream that she had, to the point where she didn't want to go to like just a normal school. Studies wasn't at the top for Rachel. Dance was everything to her. She was very intelligent, don't get me wrong, but dance was at the forefront, to the point where she begged, and eventually her parents allowed her to go to the Dance Factory Dance School. Now, I should have said this is in Australia, in a town called Richmond. The Dance Factory Dance School is obviously where Rachel just thrived. She was doing really well. She had a great friend group. At this point now, we are up to 1999. And at this period of time, Rachel is 15, like I say, great friend group. She had a boyfriend who she'd met at the dance school called Manny Corella. And you see pictures of him, very good looking boy. They were just a beautiful couple. And for all intents and purposes, Rachel was just living the dream. She just had this amazing life, and she appreciated it, and she was very close to her parents. And how Rachel's days normally went on say Monday to Friday, when she got up, she'd obviously get ready for school, and her dad would take her to the tram station, because she was quite, even though she was popular, like I say, she was quite very kind, and she was a bit timid, much to the point that she didn't want to get on the bus to go to the tram station. She was a bit fearful of it. And I don't know if fearful's the right word, but she'd ask her dad to take her to the tram station, basically. She'd go to the tram station, she would get off the tram, she would go and meet her friends who lived nearby, because the dance school was in a different town. It wasn't far, but it was in a different little town. And she'd meet her friends, and they'd all go to school together. And on the way home, she would again walk back to the tram station, get on the tram, and her dad would pick her up from the tram station, bring her home. That was the general routine. So on Monday, the 1st of March, 1999, as you know, every weekday morning, they got ready, and her dad, Mike, dropped her off to the tram station. And he said he'll pick her up between, I think it's 6 and 6:15. That's when they'd always arranged to meet. So she gave her dad a hug. She said, "Have a good day," and off she toddled. Now, at 6:15 that evening, Elizabeth, Rachel's mum, she's cooking dinner. She's got the young 2 girls, and she's sort of looking at the clock, and she's like, "Where are they? They should be walking through," because I don't think the tram station was very far from the house at all, a couple of minutes. So she's like, It took till 7:45, so an hour and a half after they're due home. Eventually, Elizabeth, the phone goes, she picks it up, and Mike's on the other end of the line. And he says, I've been waiting, and trams have gone by. She hasn't got off her tram. She hasn't got off the next one. I don't know what's going on. So Mike came back. They immediately called the police. Now, in this case, what I've seen, the research I've done, like I say, the film or documentary, drama, I'd say you'd more call it. The police don't come off very well at all in all of this. Their initial reaction, and bearing in mind it's going back to 99, but still I've done stories going back to the 90s, and I still find it was really lacking, because they just said, she's 15, we have cases like this, just go to bed, she'll turn up in the morning. Basically what they were told. And they were trying to get across to the police, our daughter's not like this. Our daughter wouldn't run away. She's very open with us. We have, built amazing trust with her. There's no way this is something she'd do. She's just not that type of girl. Police weren't having any of it. They were just like, no, just, she'll be fine, she'll turn up, basically. So this is the Box Hill Police Department. Sorry. So the parents are just beside themselves, and they're like, right, okay, we need to get involved. So they start phoning around their friends, and first port of call was Manny. They knew of him, they knew about him, they'd met him, they liked him. And Manny, he eventually tells them that during the day, Rachel had said, I've got a job to go to this evening. I can't tell you anything about it. All I will say is tomorrow I'm going to have a lot of money in my pocket. She not only told Manny this, she told her circle of friends. And they were all a bit intrigued by it. They were, come on, tell us what it is, what's going on. And she wouldn't. She said she can't say, but just rest assured, tomorrow, basically, she's going to be rolling in money. They're all 15. They're all quite innocent. They're not really seeing anything too sinister in this. It said they just presumed she maybe had a modelling job or something. And when she went on her lunch with Manny, they actually went to a local shopping centre, and within there was a shoe store that she kept looking at these pair of shoes that she really wanted. Apparently these blue platform shoes that she was after. She couldn't afford them herself, but on this day, on this Monday the 1st of March, she goes in and she reserves them. She says, put them to the side and I'll come in tomorrow and buy them. Manny was there for that, so of course it emphasises that she's going to, I don't think emphasise the right word, but it basically says, yes, she's going to get this money tonight. And he's a little bit uneasy about it. He doesn't quite get why she's being so secretive of it, but he trusts her, and, she's quite easygoing about it, so they don't really question it too much. So that evening, Manny says he walked to the tram with Rachel and their group of friends that normally do that walk. But Rachel turned off a different way, and basically it was to get tram number 6 in a different direction to where she would normally go. Now, it is quite sad that had nothing happened, she still would have had her parents quite worried, which is quite sad, really. But this is what the plan was. Everyone waved her off, and away she went. So when Manny got the call later on that night, he was like, she did say she was doing this, but she said she'd call me as soon as she'd be home, and she should have been home by now. So he's getting very concerned too. So the police phone her. Mary, Elizabeth and Mike. I don't know who Mary is. I'm sorry. I don't know where that's come from. Elizabeth and Mike phone up the police with this information. They're saying, she said she was going to do this job. No one knows where she's gone. She told everyone this is what she's doing. And for some reason, that re-emphasised to the police, there's no job, she's run away. But they decide to start questioning people very slowly, very lacklustre, and from their side, the Barbers start getting flyers out there, getting the community of Richmond involved, asking questions, getting it out there. Look, our daughter's, she's disappeared off the face of the earth. They're going into the next day, March 2nd, still no sign of her. No one knows where she is. you know, these parents are beside themselves now because it can't be happening. So the police bring in money for questioning. And when he tells them the story, all of a sudden then the police are like, oh, I know what's happened. You've got her pregnant and she's run away. Don't get me wrong, I know it can happen. I know these are things that can happen. But when they brought him in automatically because the boyfriend's the first person that would be looked at, you know, including the parents as well, because it's the closest to them and then they work out. Manny had a solid alibi. You know, it was proven where he was. You know, he had nothing to do with it. But when he'd come up with this story that even though they were so close, she didn't tell him where she was going, they didn't find it credible. And like I say, just assumed that, no, this girl's pregnant and off she's gone. So when they advised the parents of this is their conclusion, they were like, absolutely not. We have such a relationship with our daughter that if she was pregnant, we know she would come to us. We know she would. We are not the type of parents to, you know, throw her out or lose her temper. You know, they would have supported her, and they knew she knew that. So again, the Barbers themselves are taking it upon themselves to start researching things. So when Manny told them about Rachel going to put a hold on these shoes at that shoe store, they went in, and a couple of the cashiers says, you know what, we have had a guy in here who's been trying to recruit girls for his brothel, young girls. So the family are like, oh my God, they knew the name of the brothel. Look, the place knew the name of the brothel. And the Mike and Elizabeth phoned up the brothel and were like, you know, have you seen our daughter? You know, they're distraught. And the brother's like, no, we don't employ underage girls. I'm saying no word to say it. I didn't say anything. We haven't seen your daughter. We've got nothing to do with it. And that was the end of that conversation. And obviously, Mike and Elizabeth felt suitably reassured that Rachel wasn't there. So they're back to square one. So after 3 days, now we're at March 4th, the police finally, after uproar from the community and real pressure being put on them, begin like a proper investigation on Rachel and her whereabouts and everything else. They start, you know, asking for a list of all her close friends and family members and everything else. So they actually get an investigation up and running. So when it's put out there and it's been put on the news, a family friend who hadn't actually heard of it, I mean, it hasn't been 3 days. I don't mean that in the sense, I mean, 3 minutes for a parent would be, oh, I can't imagine. But I mean, it's been 3 days. It had only just made its way around to certain people. And there was a lady by the name of Alison, who was an old family friend. And she says, she phoned up the Barbers and she says, look, she said, I actually seen Rachel on the 1st. And she was on the tram with another girl. And they're like, right, okay, and asked for a description of the girl and everything else. And she said, I was on the platform, then I got on the tram and I was quite near the girls and they were just giggling and talking about boys and dance and everything else. She could hear them from where she was sat. And she actually seen where they got off. And it was at a particular junction. And there was some kind of apartments around there. So the police get the CCTV footage and sure enough, there is Rachel sat next to this girl. So, you know, they start issuing this out, you know, to the police, and it actually makes it onto Australia's Most Wanted programme. You know, this became nationwide then. It was a huge story because this 15-year-old girl with everything to live for has just disappeared off the face of the earth and nobody knows where she is. So as the police are going through a list of all the family and friends, Elizabeth and Mike remember that they've received a call recently from an old neighbour of theirs, well, an old neighbour's daughter, and her name is Caroline Reed Robertson. And basically, Caroline, her and her family used to live opposite the Barbers, and Caroline used to babysit for them. She used to babysit for Rachel and her younger siblings. She was 5 years older than Rachel, and it was said that, you know, she doted on the girls. She was very close to Rachel. You know, used to love to babysit. You know, they had nothing bad to say about her, and they said she'd called. So when the police went through the Barbers' phone records, you know, their house phone records, they noticed that Caroline's number, after the Barbers had given them the number, they recognised that she'd called in February, obviously before Rachel had gone missing. Now, the parents had said they hadn't had any contact, and as far as they knew, Rachel hadn't, for years. There'd been no contact with Caroline since she'd moved away. So they wasn't aware that she'd called the house in February. So the police begin to think, when they check the phone calls and they see there's 2 phone calls made, one for about 15 minutes and one for about half an hour. And they're like, right, we need to talk to this girl. So they find out where Caroline lives. And what do you know? It's those apartments at that junction where Alison had seen the 2 girls, one being Rachel, getting off the tram. So they head off round there. They knock on. There's no answer. In the meantime, sorry, bear with me. I've completely lost myself. Okay, so on March 12th of 99, so now we're nearly 2 weeks after Rachel's been missing, the police go to Caroline's apartment in the morning and they knock on. There's no answer. So they come back in the evening, and when they come back, there's still nobody there. Well, there's nobody answering. So they just decide, right, there's something going on here. They're hoping against hope that they're going to get into this apartment. Rachel's going to be in there hiding out for whatever reason. Caroline's going to have been hiding her as a friend would. And, you know, the whole case will be resolved. This is what the police are hoping is going to be behind this door when they get in. When they open the door, the apartment, quite scruffy, messy looking, but nothing out of the ordinary until they get to Caroline's bedroom. And when they open up the door, on the floor was Caroline. Not Rachel, Caroline. And at first glance, it looked like she was dead. But when they check her pulse and everything else, they call the ambulance. She's still alive. Turns out she's had a seizure and she's rushed to the hospital. Now, when she goes to the hospital, the police decide to stick around and continue having a look around her apartment. And they come across some clothes, but they're size 8. Now, Caroline, at this point in time, is 19. And she's a bigger girl. And they know that the size 8 clothes would not belong to her. And they also start to find these kind of diaries, journals, just everywhere, just ramblings of just writings everywhere. And I don't know, to me, a little bit off topic, it reminds me, if you've ever seen the film Seven, and they break into the guy's apartment and there's all these books everywhere in no particular order, just like ramblings. And that's what it looked like at first. The more they started to look at these diaries, they started to notice almost every entry was about Rachel. And they begin to realise it's a little bit of an obsession going on here. Going back for years, just a complete obsession about how perfect she is, how she wanted to be her, not be like her, be her. And eventually, they come across some paperwork, and it's government paperwork, and it's a change of name. And on the one side, it's Caroline Reed Robertson to change her name to Rachel Barber. I mean, so armed with all of this, they go straight to the hospital, the police do. And they, you know, by this point, Caroline's come round and, you know, they can talk to her. And she just says simply 2 words: she's dead. So, what had actually happened was, on those phone calls Caroline had been making to Rachel, bearing in mind Rachel was very trusting of Caroline. She was older, she was her old babysitter, she got on with her, she had no reason to suspect her of anything at all other than just being a friend. And in these phone calls, Caroline was actually telling her she was doing like a thesis of some sort, for college or uni or something, on Rachel and on her dancing. And, you know, she wanted to interview her, and it'd be worth $100 to her. You know, she would get some free clothes as well. I'm not too sure how all of that gets involved, but anyway, this is how she lured Rachel into meeting her. So when Rachel says, I'm going to earn, you know, some money, this is what she'd been promised. But what Caroline had said is, you can't tell anybody, nobody, not your boyfriend, not your parents. It has to be anonymous for this thing that she's doing. She managed to play it off very well. And don't forget, Rachel was 15. You know, she's got this, you know, £100 or $100 being waved in her face, you know, with offers of new clothes. And, you know, she had no reason not to trust Caroline at all. Not at all. The family trusted Caroline. So that was the one clause: you can't tell anybody. And the police found this written in one of these diary ramblings, and it was a list of how to get Rachel to her apartment and how she would do it. And then written on there was what she would do when Rachel got to the apartment. And basically, she was going to drug her, she was going to strangle her, she was going to disfigure her, and then she was just going to get rid of her. And once all that was completed, she could then become her. She would get facial reconstruction, have Rachel's name, and start a new life. As I'm saying it to you, it's so just, how does that thought process work? How does all of that? I don't understand. But this is what she'd written down, and that is exactly what she did. When Rachel came back to Caroline's apartment, they had a couple of drinks. She basically ordered a pizza and drugged the pizza. She put something toxic in the pizza. And when Rachel was, you know, incapacitated, she strangled her with her telephone cord until she died. And then Caroline goes into work the next day and asks for some money off her co-workers, basically saying that she was moving to her dad's, it's like a hobby farm. Is that right? Yeah, his hobby farm. And she needed money for the removal firm to get some furniture up there. She must have been able to borrow the money. Whether this was originally what she showed Rachel originally, I'm not too sure. But she this was true. She did organise a removal firm, and when the removal firm got to her apartment, she says, right, I need all this furniture moving. She said, and also within this duffel bag is a statue that she'd wrapped in carpet and put in a duffel bag. We know what's in that duffel bag. And these poor removal men unwittingly removed Rachel's body from the apartment and brought it to Caroline's dad's farm in Kilmore. And whilst when they're there and the removal men are gone, Caroline buried Rachel in a very shallow grave in an area where it was next to where they'd buried their family dog, Lucy. I mean, so that's what happened on that day. But can I just say, that was on March 4th. Now, if you remember, Caroline had killed Rachel on March 1st. So she killed Rachel not long after Rachel had gone into her apartment, basically. But she didn't hire the removal firm until March 4th. It said that for 2 days, Caroline had kept Rachel in her closet while she'd called in work sick. Now, no one knows exactly what went on during that time. It was just said she was kept in the closet before she was removed on the 4th. I mean, and in that time, Caroline's dad had actually come round to visit her because she was off sick from work for those couple of days. And he said he was in the apartment, but the bedroom door was closed and locked. But he didn't really. It was in hindsight he'd remembered that. He hadn't really thought much of it at the time. And behind that door was Rachel Barber, 15 years old, with everything to live for. And that's what she hated about her and loved about her at the same time. It's apparently there's a saying that some people hate how many people love you. I probably haven't got that right, but she was obviously so obsessed with not only Rachel herself, but the amount of people she had around her that doted on her, that loved her. She didn't feel she had that. Now, a little bit about Caroline that I've left quite near the end, and I'll tell you why. I feel like excuses have been made a little bit, and they are. I'm not dismissing her mental health, and it's said that she'd asked she'd asked her own parents for help over the years because of her thoughts that she was having. You know, she had very low self-esteem. She was, she'd been obviously jealous of Rachel for years, but it was based on, she just felt worthless about herself. She suffered with depression. She had extreme introverted personality disorder. And look, so she'd asked for help from her parents. Her parents had divorced. No one really had a lot of time for her. She wasn't close to her own siblings. She just felt she didn't have anything in common with anybody. She in her own words, she felt like she was a misfit. And I think she just believed that if she could just become Rachel, I don't know how that worked in her head, but if she could become this girl, then she would also have that life, that family that loved her and friends that loved her, and I think that was her thought process. So a year after, in March 2000, Caroline Reed Robertson, I keep saying Robinson, it's not Robinson, it's Robertson, that's my pronunciation, I'm sorry, it's Robertson, was sentenced to 20 years for the premeditated murder of Rachel Barber. She was actually released after 15. Caroline Reed Robinson is walking around free as a bird and has been since January 2015. I feel like that justice system's very like our own here. I feel if this maybe had been done in America, we wouldn't be saying she was out walking around now. Who knows? Who knows? I'm just putting that out there. I mean, they say life sentence in a lot of countries, Australia, Canada, the UK. I know there's an awful lot more. They say that life is 15 years. That's what they class as life. I know in a lot of American states, life is life. And the majority of the time, there's no possibility of parole. Caroline was sentenced 20 years with the possibility of parole, and I think she'd gone up for parole, a parole meeting back in 2013. She was turned down, but yeah, in October 2014 it was agreed, and she was released in January 2015. Rachel's parents themselves were devastated. It said that they would have liked her to at least served 17 years, but I think the fact that she's never showed any remorse over what she did, she claims that it was all a bit of a haze. She doesn't properly remember what happened. She's stuck to that over the years from what I've been able to tell. And Rachel's parents are very worried for people who are around Caroline. It's said that she got a lot of help while she was in prison. Manny, Rachel's boyfriend, it was said that he had severe anxiety knowing that she was about to be released. This girl's affected so many people's lives because there were so many people who loved and adored Rachel Barber. So all those people have been left devastated by what Caroline did. And the fact that she showed no remorse at all. And when she was released, there was a photo taken. Now Caroline had lost all that weight that she'd had, so she's all looking very lean and her face is coming straight into hair. It said that she's still trying to create somewhat of a look of Rachel. They looked nothing like. Rachel had dark hair. She was very petite. She had these beautiful green eyes. She was just a very uniquely beautiful girl that anyone would look at and she would just stand out. Caroline, I wouldn't have said she was unattractive at all. Her own view of herself was, she had very low self-esteem, like I say, but from an outside perspective, no, she looked fine. She genuinely did. And now she still doesn't look anything like Rachel. She looks, I don't want to say anything positive about her, to be honest, but she looks okay now. And what was said by Rachel's mum was that there's something in Caroline's eyes that look just like my deceased daughter. And that just put such a shiver down my spine because I don't know what that means. I've looked, and obviously I can't see a resemblance, but from a mum, whatever she's seeing, that must just be devastating. You can't imagine it, can you? Your poor child goes to school, they're 15, they're living an amazing life. They've got an amazing life ahead of them for all intents and purposes, just the world's their oyster, and just someone comes along who is so bent and riddled with jealousy and hatred. It wasn't a love for Rachel. How? That she thought that was okay. She thought she'd be able to do that and just become Rachel. She said she wants to become her, not like her, become her. I don't know. Help me out if you can explain that at all, because I just, even as I'm telling the story, I'm like, how? I don't get the mind process. I don't get it of a lot of my stories though. We're not supposed to, are we? But yeah, that was just the devastating Rachel Barber story. Honestly, just so sad. If you do want to watch the film, like I say, it's a film drama. It's not romanticised at all. The scene when Rachel does go back to Caroline's apartment is very graphic. It's very brutal. Just so sad. Just so sad. But it's called In Her Skin or I Am You. I don't know why there's two names for this film. They're both the same film. I don't understand. But it's from 2009. And yeah, if you like to obviously watch it, it explains. It's very on point for all the information I've learned. So, which I like that. I like when it's the facts are pretty on point. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back soon. I hope you're all okay out there. Thank you again. Please subscribe or drop a like or a comment. It's my little jingle. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Thank you.